So we're broadcasting this online. We have 500-600 people signed up to watch online as well. So pretty excited about that. So a little bit about Jarvis. We're a world-class, nimble, fast-growing technology firm. Our roots are based in the communities in which we work. And we believe in empowering the community and those who are underrepresented in the workforce. We believe in people over profit. We believe in breaking barriers, pushing boundaries, and inspiring the next generation. So women in technology has become an essential part of who we are because we believe in pushing boundaries, breaking down barriers, and providing an inclusive forum for women at all stages of their career. I'm thrilled to announce our moderator for today, Farah Nasser. Farah is an award-winning journalist who brings extensive experience to her role as anchor of Global National, Global's flagship national evening newscast on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, as well as many global news specials. With over 2 decades of experience, hard to believe, Farah, I think I've been watching you all those 2 decades. I've reported on major events from Queen Elizabeth's passing to Joe Biden's election in Washington to a number of other world events and tragedies for that matter. So she was the first journalist to be granted a one-on-one interview with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau following as we tried to reopen the country during the pandemic. I remember that interview as well. So you're considered a trailblazer for being one of the first Canadian television journalists to challenge the status quo in reporting on race and equity. So please join me in welcoming Farah to the stage.
Thank you so much, Ian. Check. The news anchor doesn't know how to use a mic. Look at that. All right. It's great to be with you all today. It's really an honor to be part of this panel and to get to know more about Jarvis and the incredible work you guys are doing. I've learned about your incubator today and so many other different initiatives you have at Jarvis and talks like this. This is the first one in person, so it's so nice to see all your beautiful faces today. This is a gathering for multiple purposes. So one is, of course, to talk about, to celebrate women's contributions, right, to the tech space, but also to talk about the challenges that are encountered. We're going to talk a little bit about that, especially when it comes to the journeys of these women you're about to meet, and also their failures. You know, what went wrong? What did they learn from? And I think the tech industry does a great job of falling forward, right? So we're going to learn a bit more about that. And this is really for those of you who aspire to be in footsteps like these. This is to inspire you to be able to do that and to know that you belong. Now, we know that the tech industry is really the heart of innovation. It's instrumental in shaping our world today, tomorrow. But if we're being honest with each other, it has not always been the most inclusive space. Women have historically been underrepresented, and it is changing. Women are breaking barriers. They're leading projects. They're innovating in all sectors, as we're gonna learn a little bit more today. But I think hearing from women who've really made their mark in this industry and can really shed their light, and I asked them, I'm like, any questions off the table? Can I ask you really anything? And they all said, yes, we're open books. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to you hearing their unique perspectives and the challenges that they have faced over their long careers in tech. We're going to discuss career paths, mentorship, diversity and inclusion, and the role how women are shaping the future of technology. And I want you to know this conversation, though I have about 35,000 questions, there really is room for you here. So while you're listening, please jot down your questions. I promise I won't take up all the time here. There are microphones, as you can see, so jot them down, and please feel free to ask your questions. And then we have a networking event, so even if you don't get your questions, keep them in mind, because we are all going to be sticking around afterwards, and we'll be happy to speak to some of you. So without further ado, enough from me. Let's meet our panelists and start this discussion. So joining us from New York is the EVP and CIO of TD Bank, AMCB, America's most convenient bank, Judy Din. Judy has 25 years of experience as a technology executive in the financial services industry. She joined TD in June of 2020 as their chief architect for TD Bank Group and CIO for U.S. credit cards, and assumed her current role in November of 2021, a year later, and she's responsible for technology strategy, planning and delivery for TD Bank, America's most convenient bank. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Judy Din.
All
right. We're also delighted to have join us Joanne Duen from La Belle Provence as EVP of Technology and Projects. She has 35 years of experience in IT for major Quebec organizations. You look great. She leads a team of 9,000 people on project delivery, solution development, and IT operations for Desjardins, for the Desjardins Group. In 2019, the Information Technology Association of Canada named her Chief Information Officer of the Year for the public sector. So please join me in welcoming Joanne Duen. Some of you might know our next guest if you run in tech circles here in Toronto, Eva Wong. We're thrilled to have her. She's joining us from Borrowell. She is the co-founder and COO of Borrowell, which, if you didn't know, it's a fintech company dedicated to making financial prosperity possible for everyone. With over 2 million members, Borrowell is one of Canada's largest and fastest growing fintech companies. Eva and her co-founder, Andrew Graham, have been named EY Entrepreneur of the Year. So give her a round of applause as she comes up to the stage. Eva Wong, everyone. Our next guest was recruited to Walmart Canada as Vice President of Product and Delivery to steward the accelerated investment in technology in 2021, and she was promoted to Chief Technological Officer. Michonne Williams and her team are responsible for core system strategy and delivery, technology infrastructure and operations, InfoSec and architecture across stores, pharmacy, supply chain, merchandising, core data platforms, associate tools, and enterprise technology, including real estate. You really have your hands full. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, Michonne Williams. Now, as we do with events like this, I've given everyone your bio, but of course that does not tell the full story of who you are. So if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you all the same question to start, and that is, what inspired you to get into technology, which I'm sure when you got into this field was very male-dominated, and if you had any role models, maybe some shout-out to those role models. Michonne, we're going to start with you.
Hello.
You're there?
Yeah. Not everybody has to start as young as I did, but I had a really fertile ground at home. My father was really into computers, so even at an early age, we had some, I'm not going to tell you the computers because that's going to date me, but we had computers at home. I loved to play with them. I used them for computer science projects, or science fair projects, and that led me to want to study computers. So I had a lot of varied interests growing up, and I just kind of realized pretty soon that with technology, you have a toolkit that can be applied to all kinds of different problems. So at the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do because I was interested in everything. So I thought if I learned technology, then I could have a future that was open to solve all kinds of problems. So I'm really glad that I made that choice. Certainly had a lot of encouragement at home. I have to admit, though, there were many quitting moments through my journey.
You're all nodding your head.
I remember I had a particular quitting moment in my second year of university when I was studying computer hardware architecture. And we were kind of having to, map out zeros and ones and build the concept of a motherboard. And I just didn't understand, why am I doing this, And it didn't feel like there was a why in it for me. And I remember calling my mom and saying, I really want to quit. And she said, you're going to have a lot of moments like that. But if you keep in mind what you want to achieve with it, you can keep going. So I'm glad I stuck with it because it's been really fruitful.
That's amazing. I'm sure you have very proud parents too. Yeah, it's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, I was once on a panel which was basically the subtitle was "You're never too young or too old to start a company," and I was the old one. I feel like this is the same thing. You're never too young or too old to start in technology, and I didn't start at a young age. I really just fell into technology 8-9 years ago when I became part of the co-founding team of Borrowell. I was always someone who liked math, but I really studied business and really just sort of like more fell into technology. But it's been an amazing career, and I guess I'd encourage anyone who doesn't have like a super technical background that it's never too late to learn, and you can always build a team around you of people who are more technical. But it's been an amazing journey having a career in technology, and there's just like so much that's changing all the time, so much innovation, and so much that you can do.
Is this working? Yes, you can hear me? Well, I'm going to surprise a lot of people here because I have not studied in technology. Have not. I hated math, really with a passion. I had dyslexia in school, so it was really, really difficult. And actually, I started because I was working in operations for a bank. I knew I wanted to work for a financial institution. That was always really interesting. And, you know, they were looking for people at the time to come in, because at the time you had to go into the office to do the tests, the user acceptance testing. So I was the nerd that would raise my hand. I said, that seems like fun. So I would come in, you know, in the middle of the night, Saturday, between Saturday and, you know, I was young, so I would just go out and then come back in the office after. But I would go in, you know, do the testing. And then I thought it was really fascinating to talk to the IT people. So after a while of doing this, the IT people came up to me and they said, you know, Joanne, we think you should come and work in IT. And I said, are you kidding me? I said, I've seen these programmers in school. They all look like they were fed up. I can't do that. That's not who I am. They said, no, we think you have really some abilities. And I did do the switch over. I went to IT. I took a chance, and discovered a passion, a whole field that I loved and that I'm passionate about. And I've been in there now. So now my people tell me, don't stop telling people you're not in IT, because you've been in IT now for over 30 years. So that's where I learned. And I did actually most of all of the jobs in IT because I wanted to learn how things would work. And slowly worked my way up to determine that I knew that I wanted to become CIO one day. That was a job that I thought was really interesting, that conjugated business savvy with the technological savvy. And that's it.
The rest is history. That's amazing. The thing I got out of that is that you didn't like math and you're doing this job, so there's hope for all of us.
There's hope. There's hope for everybody.
Judy, how about you? How did you get started? And did you have any role models then?
No role models. No, unfortunately. Yeah. This is quite an eccentric panel. It's fantastic to see how like you can be and come from any discipline and start at any age and still like have a successful career in technology. That's really impressive. I'd say I'm probably more traditional or maybe typical. I literally just lucked out. You know, I was good in math, and I needed a job, and I needed a career, and you know, I came from a family who didn't have a lot, and so I really kind of had to fend for myself. And I said, hey, this technology thing seems like to be a good career choice. And the University of Waterloo accepted me, which again was like an aha. I'm like, wow, really? They let me in? Oh my gosh. And I was present with all those interesting looking people. I was probably one of them. Swan, maybe. and yeah, many times I thought, you know, I'm gonna get, this is just not for me. But what's great about technology, like you experience, there's so many different roles, and even now, in day and age, you can be artistic and you can be a designer and you can design user interfaces, you can do testing, you can do analytics. Like there's so many jobs that are under the technology realm that I really have loved to see the influx of different disciplines and personalities, which has just really been lovely and just really rounded out the technology departments in various industries. So I'm grateful to see so many lovely gender faces in the audience, and we thank you for coming to listen to us talk.
Great. That's such an interesting way to start, because we get to know you a little bit better. And, you know, whenever I hear somebody who's in a really powerful position, like you just did, say that, you know, I can't believe they let me in, you know, that feeling. Do you, all four of you, would put your hands up, and maybe in the audience, actually, we can ask, have you ever suffered from imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Yeah? Anyone? Imposter syndrome? Yeah? a lot of honest people in this group. I'll put my hand high up because I still suffer from it. But I think it's so interesting to be in this position and be so high up and still have that kind of thought that is like, do I belong here? Am I supposed to be here? And I think we'll get to that in a bit. But I want to start with resilience, because you talked about dyslexia. You talked about the challenges that you had faced as well, Michonne. Let's start with that. Maybe, Michonne, you can start us off. How do you define resilience?
I'm still learning what that is.
Interesting.
I think that I would say that technology is one of the greatest training grounds for resilience, because I don't think that I've ever been on a project where something didn't go wrong. This concept of a project that goes right, a lot of people, we still do it. We assess things, red, yellow, green. And, folks want to be on the green project. There's never a green project. There's always something to navigate. And it's actually taken me a long time, though, to realize that when there's obstacles or when there's issues or when there's failures or when something breaks, as it inevitably does, that's not necessarily a fault. It's the nature of things. And so I've mentioned this book a number of times. I've spent a lot of time over my career reading a lot, and I read a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And I think it's about resilience for me is considering that any life that's worthwhile and a career that's worthwhile has an immense amount of challenges and plenty of pitfalls. So it's about dancing through those obstacles and finding a way to navigate around them instead of maligning them or being disappointed and challenged. IT and tech people get a lot of challenges from their business partners because they expect everything to be working all the time.
They never like us.
But that's the nature of the business.
Joanne, you spoke about dyslexia, right? And not being maybe the star student in mathematics. What strategy did you use to be more resilient in your career?
Well, it's interesting because I have this conversation I'm mother of a teenage daughter.
Oh.
So we were talking about this the other day because she was having some difficulties, and I said, well, life, number one, it's not easy. We all have challenges. I think everybody has challenges. I started young with the dyslexia, and then I just learned that I knew that I wanted just to persevere, just to try different stuff and find ways, try to be creative and finding ways to learn. I knew that I would learn differently than the others. And at the time, the diagnostics weren't as such they are today, so I just would try stuff. And I have a twin sister, and my twin sister was great. She would teach me stuff. She would take the courses back and show me, because she knew that it would take me sometimes, especially in math, a little bit longer to get it done. I got it done, but still, I didn't like it. So, and then when I was 24, because we said no taboo subjects, I was diagnosed with a cancer when I was 24. And you learn resiliency there again, because I remember that I was telling Benoit actually this today. I was sitting there in the waiting room, and you're thinking, you're 24, you get this cancer diagnostic, and you think, why me? Why me? This is stupid. You get mad. And then all of a sudden, I took a moment and I sat down. I looked around the waiting room, and you saw all people, all types of people.
Doesn't discriminate.
Races, doesn't discriminate, ages. And I said, okay, I've got to learn from this. So I think it's in your attitude, just to have faith that things will get better and you can get through this. Whoever said that life is supposed to be easy? No one. You just have to bounce back. So it's your abilities. For me, resiliency is bouncing back, persevering, and knowing that something good will come of it, believing that, and knowing that ultimately you can do it. So that's it.
Yeah, Judy, we were speaking when the mics were off about how, when you were younger, and I was saying the same thing in my career, you're just constantly trying to prove yourself, and you're just like doing everything. And even when you know sometimes that things are your lowest point, but you're like, I got to keep climbing up. And then, you come to a point where you get older and you're like, wait a minute, I don't have to prove this. How has resilience shaped your career? What role has it played for you?
First of all, I've never used that word resilience until recently, right? I think it's really fascinating in the industry how all of a sudden it's a buzzword and everyone, have to be resilient. I don't know what that was. I guess for me it was just being persistent, right? The thing to remember is all of us have a low point. no matter what title you're given and what level you aspire to, or how much money you have, or how much money in the bank, it really, problems do not, problems always present themselves in no matter what shape or fashion they come in. And you really just got to figure out the why, like what's going to get you through this next, problem set. But what we were talking, offline was really about, I think, at least I'll speak for both of us, right? Early in your career, there's always a lot of proving. I have to prove something, I have to prove myself, especially a woman in technology in the time that I went through it. Maybe it's still, hopefully, I hope it's not happening like that today. You're always trying to prove yourself. And then you get to a point in your career or your wisdom or your age where you realize like you've done enough that you actually start to feel very confident in yourself. And you no longer have to have that proving feeling. And that is the most beautiful feeling on earth, I have to tell you, right? There are moments where you're like, oh, you have imposter syndrome, like, how did I get up here in this panel of women? What am I doing here today? Those are moments. But there's nothing more powerful on earth, in my opinion, than the power of confidence. And for me, how I've always tried to achieve that even today is to learn. Right? Knowledge has been extremely powerful for me. You're able to understand it, learn it. No one here in this room cannot learn anything. You can learn anything. Even you can learn technology, even though you're not a mathematician. And so to me, that's what's been great. And I do see that a lot with the people that come into the organization who are successful. People who just know how to problem solve. Like, what's the problem you want me to solve? Okay, let me go deduce it, figure out what I have to learn. Spend the midnight hours learning all about it so that when you walk in and when you believe in yourself, because that level of confidence, like nothing can stop you. So that's really sort of that persistence.
And not to get too hokey, but it's also like you just said, believing in yourself and loving yourself and knowing what makes you stand out, like what makes you different, why you were hired, why you're in this position, why you're a leader, and kind of when you fully grasp that and understand it, you can be unstoppable. And you've been nodding, Eva, so please add to the conversation.
Yeah, I love, Judy, what you shared about confidence. And I think that I agree. As you get older, and I think you just sort of step into it a little bit more. I guess what I want to encourage everyone to do is, I do think confidence is a muscle that you can build over time. And the way that you do that, I think, is by doing things that scare you just like a little bit. And when you push yourself a little bit to do something, and again, it's not to say that, I'm so great, like and to pretend. I do think it's like, you have the confidence to know that you can solve this problem. You can figure out something. You can ask for help. It doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own. But I think that was really instrumental for me, is I got put into situations where I was like, I have no idea how to do this, but I asked for help, and I Googled a lot of things, and you figure it out. And then the next time I had to do something, I was like, okay, I didn't know how to do like A, I figured it out. It gave me confidence that I don't know how to do B, but I can figure that out. And again, you do that every week for a number of weeks over years, and eventually I think you get to a place where it's like, I can figure this out. And I agree, it's like a great place to be, and you can step into it. And it's not an imposter syndrome. It's I think it's just one of those things where it's like, I can figure this out. I'm solving a problem that no one has like ever solved before, so no one is like more or less qualified than me. Like, why shouldn't I be the one to figure out a solution to this?
Yeah, I love that it's something that can be practiced and can be learned. That's such a great outlook. I'm going to share that with my 8-year-old daughter, so thank you for that. Now to get a little bit deeper with you, and I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this panel was because they told me that we're going to be talking about failure, and we're going to be talking about mistakes and how we've learned from the mistakes. And I think that's something that we don't do enough, and I really appreciate you all being here. So I'd love to ask you, would one of you share perhaps a personal or professional experience where you've faced some sort of significant failure in your tech career and you've learned from it? And I'm not going to put one person on the spot. I'll let whoever wants to answer that take it.
There's so many to choose from.
I'm happy to start. At Borrowell, we have over the years launched a number of new products, and one of them didn't work the way that we had expected it to. And I think actually the problem was that we had put all of our eggs in this basket, and there was so much stress on all the people involved because it was like, this has to work. I think like part of it was also that products like this had worked in other markets, especially in the US and in Canada. There can be a tendency to be like, it worked in the US, just bring it over here, it'll be like super easy. And so we took shortcuts that we probably shouldn't have. We assumed that things would work the same way. We didn't do the user research that we should have. In some ways, it's like if we'd slowed down, we would have moved faster. But because we were like pushing ourselves to move so fast, we took these shortcuts, which in the end meant that we had to spend more time going back and reworking things. But it was like because like we'd put so much into it, I think it really did feel like, we failed. When I think in hindsight, we shouldn't have expected every new product that we launched to work. No company has like 100% success rate in launching new products. I think the mistake really was in like not having a backup, not trusting ourselves to, or maybe me not trusting myself to like push back on people more senior who are saying, just like do this, just launch it, get it as quickly as possible. I'm sure it'll be successful. And it wasn't.
Michelle, I'll turn it over to you. I mean, if you don't want to give me an example, that's cool. But do you feel like you view failure differently now than you did maybe at the beginning of your career?
So much. And I'm sure I'll feel differently at the end of my career, too. I did have a very early feeling of failure. I started out at RBC in online banking, and I was developing a new application for travel health insurance online. And it was very late in the project, and I realized that I had missed a very important stakeholder group and a whole bunch of requirements in the design of the application, which was going to lead to a major delay. And this was very clearly my failing and my miss. And I just remember sitting there at my desk going, and thinking, oh no, this is the end, or feeling very personally devastated about this miss. And over time, just realizing, how many times that type of stuff does happen.
And how it always seems like the end of the world.
But also with my position now, how much more empathetic I can be when people do miss things, and it's all about the correction and the next step, and the fail forward. So I have built that muscle over time. But now in my career, I'm much more concerned about my own personal failings. So not necessarily the outcomes of projects or technologies, but whenever I feel like I didn't show up the way that I wanted to, that to me right now is when I feel like I've failed. And that's when I, reflect on, okay, how could I have dealt with that differently? How could I have done that differently? How could I have taken a breath or a pause and approached something differently? So, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I feel really good with how I've engaged as a leader, how I've supported my team, and how I've proceeded through challenges. And then if you do that consistently enough, even when you do mess up, it usually works out in the end.
Yeah, and sometimes opportunities come out of it, right? Have there been, you both talked about, sorry, did you?
Well, failure's never final either. It's a process, No project is ever truly done. There's always a next step.
Yeah, absolutely. You both, when I asked that question, you both looked at each other and said, yeah, there's been so many. So have there been any unexpected opportunities that have come out of past failures? Is there something that sticks out over your more than 3 decades in your career?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, honestly, I don't recall the technical failures related to projects. Honestly, I don't remember them because there have been many. You fall and you miss deadlines and you disappoint people. The ones to me that were the hardest is when I felt that I was disappointing either my team members or the company globally, in terms that, I felt that it wasn't up to snuff. So what I've learned also along the time, years ago, if you would have told me when I was your age, I'm looking people, the young people here, if you would have given me advice, I would have probably not listened to you at all. I'm being honest, because I had that arrogance where I thought that, why is this person telling me this? what are they talking about? They don't really know. And what I've learned with time is that people are, there's a term in French called bienveillance. People are well-intentioned. They tell you this advice because they want to help you and they want you to succeed. So what I've learned with time is to be a lot more open with regards to comments that people are giving me, even to this day. I try to hire really smart people, smarter than me. I love my team. I think they're really, really smart. And then I listen to them when they tell me, they said, no, I don't have a good feeling. I think we should do this way. And I think that that's the key to success. And when I thought that I failed was when I thought that I didn't do that well enough in the past. Yeah.
But you seem like a really good boss. I would totally work for you. Yeah. Just for
We'll
the
have to ask
record.
them.
Just for the record. Judy, I'm curious from you. Do you think a woman's experience with failure differs from a man's experience with failure?
I don't know because I've never been a man. I don't
Right.
know. I mean, what I would say about failure, I think the first thing I've learned is it's your own definition of failure. Like it's your definition, even though you think it's a generic definition. And you know, I'll give you the most traumatic one of my life. It was when I was a developer and I locked the database on the core banking system and brought the whole bank down. Yeah. So those of us who are technical know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so there is Judy, 20-year-old, who did this? And it's pretty obvious it's me, right? Because even in the logs, it says, who did it? And as it happens today, you have to go to a special lovely counsel to explain yourself when you put these types of things in. And that particular event had the president of the bank there. That was really fun. And so who here would think that that's a failure? Yeah, so I actually brought my resignation letter with me. Like, honestly, I didn't sleep, sweating. Like, there's no typical, and I literally, I'm like, well, I'm going to get fired today. Like, there's no bigger definition of failure with thinking you're going to lose your job. And so I went there, I had the envelope, everything. I stand up in this room, and I have to explain what I did. But the most interesting learning experience was that I stood up in the front of that room, and I made no excuses. Right? I simply said, yeah, I messed up. Like, I totally messed up. I don't have an excuse why I messed up. I should have checked it. I should have had, a second person look at the code, peer coding. It's my bad. And I literally, in a room as big as this, I'm like, and here's my resignation. And it was the president that said, what are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean, what am I talking about? And it was an example whereby I thought that was, and it was a failure, come on. But I thought the biggest definition of failure was I was going to lose my job, and they did not fire me. They did not fire me. In fact, they knew that I would learn from this for the rest of my life. Look how old I am now, and I'm still talking about it. Right? And that's the whole thing, is it's your definition of failure. It's whatever your biggest fear in life is what you define as failure. But know that the person across from you, the person, your boss, may have a different definition of failure.
Do you think that opened you up to take more risks? Well, not that risk, obviously, but did it give you permission to not worry so much when you took a risk in the future or when something went wrong in the future?
I think for certain things, and I think that you were trying to get at, right, is knowing that there is a way to do something, and there is almost like this checklist, especially in technology. There's always a checklist. Like, is there someone to back you up? Is there a way to check your check, check? Like, is there a way to mitigate the risk by having some way to mitigate it? And that's a person or having someone look at the code, et cetera. So to me, it was learning that there are other people who know how to do this, and there are ways in which to mitigate it. That's what banking is really amazing for, honestly. Banking will teach you how to mitigate your risks. And so that's probably the biggest thing I learned. And that, as you talked about, I'm a big risk taker. Like, I take risks all the time. Those don't make me scared. But yeah, that's different.
That's great. That's inspiring. Are there any examples of companies, organizations that you've seen really embrace this whole idea of falling forward that you could give us?
Fintechs.
Eva?
Well, maybe one, I could talk about Borrowell. I think hopefully we've learned from our failures, and even, like we started out as a lender, and what we realized is that as a lender, it's like very hard to like find people and market to people with a particular credit profile. And so we became the first company in Canada to give credit scores away for free, but it was really to solve our own problem, which is we were giving people their credit scores so that we could say, hey, you've got like a great credit score. Why are you carrying credit card debt? We could give you a loan at a lower interest rate. But we realized that we could solve that problem for banks and other fintechs as well. So through sort of like trying to solve a problem of our own and really failing in trying to like market this lending product, we came up with a solution that solves problems for lots of people.
Did you have an example you wanted to give?
Well, I have two. So everybody remembers about a year and a half ago, Microsoft came out with this bot. Anybody remember the bot was interfacing with Twitter, and the bot started to spew out racist and really, really bad stuff. But what was interesting is that what they did with that, so Satya went back to his team and said, it's okay. Number one, he apologized, which is the good thing to do. But then he sat with his team to say, I don't want you to stop doing what you're doing. Yes, we have to learn. They adjusted their processes. From our perspective, we had our organization data breach in 2019, which is actually quite well known, and it's not the same organization today. So we took this situation and we said, okay, well, I came on board in 2020, right after, but the culture of the company was, okay, we have to learn from this. What can we learn from this? What do we have to change going forward? Knowing that, okay, well, it's not perfect, wasn't perfect. And by the way, at the time, I was a CIO. All the CIOs were saying, oh my God, it could have been us. Because all of the CIOs had pretty much the same.
We still do.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we learned and accepted that, okay, it's not perfect, and it's okay to fail. But now what do we do about the resiliency, getting back up, fixing it, to reinstate the confidence that people were expecting from us?
That's a really great example. Yeah, I think that's a really great example. I want to pivot now to leadership. And Michelle, I'm going to start with you. When you transitioned from a technical role to a leadership position, what skills did you find you were maybe lacking that you needed a bit more of? And what skills do people need here to get to that level?
I think leadership journeys can start at any time, and we're always having the opportunity to develop leadership skills, even if you're not, in a formal leadership position. So I was really lucky throughout my career that I took opportunities, even when I wasn't considered a senior leader, to lead across the organization. But I think that when I really learned how to lead was when I switched industries, to be honest. I had worked in financial services from 17 onwards till my mid-30s. And it was after my second child that I had an opportunity to just do a complete 180 and work for a very different industry. And when you move into something where you're, completely uncomfortable, I remember I was always wearing blue blazers, so that was the uniform in banking. And I showed up. I was the CIO for TJX, which is Winners, Home Sense, and Marshalls. And I thought, oh man, that would be such a fun job, all the fashion and everything. But I did not have the wardrobe for that job. Did not have the right wardrobe for that job. I still don't, but. When you really move into something where you have to be humble and to be learning and to be inquisitive and to be uncomfortable with what you don't know, that's when I felt like I really grew as a leader. And then the pandemic hit. And leading a business where the stores had to close through the pandemic was one of the hardest and scariest things. I'm sure for most people, the pandemic was a seismic event. And what I really learned through the pandemic was the critical importance of communication. And I don't mean like quarterly town halls. I mean showing up every day and authentically communicating what you're afraid of, what you're excited for, what's important, and making sure that those channels are always open. So I do think, certainly in technology, there's a lot of folks that, you grow up with your head down. And it's important to look up and make sure that you're communicating as much as possible with whoever you're leading.
You know, Judy, you and I spoke also about before we came on stage. You know, you've had a few jobs, a few. Couple? No, a few. You've changed your job. So do you find every time you've done a different role, it's kind of increased your leadership abilities? And what qualities do you think you need to be a leader in tech right now?
So that's two different questions, yeah. The leadership, you know, what's interesting is over the decades, I know what you guys experience as well, and even in different companies, right? The leadership skills that they're looking for are very different, and you see them evolving over time. So that's one thing to remember. Like, there's leadership skills, you know, everything from very basic things, so like how do you do contract negotiations, to how do you do a budget, to how do you hire people, how do you let them go, how do you run a department, how do you make it scale, you know, you're a group of 20, now you're a group of 1,000. These are general, like, I'll tell them experiences and leadership skills. But the soft characteristics of a leader are what make or break a culture, right? Accountability, empathy, humility. You know, some cultures are fear-based cultures, in all honesty. Like, that's a conscious decision to be very autocratic versus being very team-oriented. So what's interesting about being a leader is understanding what's the culture of that community that you're being a part of. And will that bring out the leadership skills that you actually have or want to have? And is it, when you wake up every day, is that a good place for you to feel? So what I've learned is, remember this, like, there are so many companies in the world, so many jobs in the world. Just try to find the culture that fits your personality, right? Never ever think you're the failure because you can't figure out how to operate in this division or this group or this company. That's the biggest thing I've learned, which is I tried to turn myself inside out, to be someone I wasn't, to the point where for 10 years I never wore a skirt because I was trying so hard to do everything that the culture told me I was supposed to do. And it was only through that evolution where I realized, like, you know, this is my personality, these are my values, this is the kind of person I want to be, this is the culture in which brings out the best in me. And those cultures that don't bring out the best in me, guess what? That's okay. There's a bunch of you who will really do amazing in that one because it's not going to be me. I just got to go find mine. So I look at job searching or jobs like dating. Sometimes you're like on that swipey app like forever. And if you look at my career and my resume, that's probably what it looks like. Well, swipe, let's go. And but no, and also recognize even when you've been there, right, you purposely should change as well so you can learn a different leadership skill and quality as well. So I don't know if I answered your question. I went off on a tangent.
No, it does. I mean, I think
do.
The culture thing is just so key. Eva, can I ask you about leadership skills right now? I mean, you've had this company for under a decade. Talk to me about the skills that you need and what you'd like to see in future leaders.
Yeah, I love what I've heard just around like the importance of soft skills and listening and culture. I would also say if you aren't happy with the culture where you're working now, start a company and think about
what you did?
culture. It is in a lot of ways, right? Like we were very thoughtful about the kind of place that we wanted to work, and some of it was reactionary. It's like, oh, I never want to work at a place where, you know, there are processes that don't make sense, or, you know, where you have to have 2 phones because like your employer won't let you. Anyways, there was like a lot of things that that we wanted and a lot of things that we didn't want. But yeah, I'd say that over the course of the years at Borrowell, it's obviously things have changed and what's needed has changed over time. But that's what's kept things interesting and exciting. So I just feel so privileged. We work with an amazing team. There's a few team members here today, and yeah, I'm excited. I think, you know, at the beginning you have to do like a lot of doing, and then I think you eventually manage people who are doing, and then I think you have to like manage people who are managing. So what's needed is like different along the way, and now it feels like a lot of, I feel like in a lot of ways I'm like not needed. People don't want me in doing their job, but it's more around setting the culture, setting processes around like how we work, and then leading with vision. Like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What's our mission? How do we stay on track with that?
So when you look at the future leaders who are in this room, what would you like to tell them? What are some of the skills that you think about?
I think authenticity is so important, and you should be able to lead from a place that feels, true to you. So that's one thing I would encourage. And Judy, you've shared an experience of it's just not fun to have to try to turn yourself inside out to fit into a place where it doesn't work for you.
Because there's another place for you that probably works
There's
a lot
another
better.
place for you, and if you're not at a place where you feel like you can be yourself, I think it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would say about being a leader is you have to figure out what you're leading. Right? You might be in a group of individuals where they just meet, the leadership skill might be you need to be the cheerleader, rah rah. You might be the type of leader in that particular situation where you really do need to provide daily micromanagement level detail, because that's what the group of community needs. You might have another group where you're oh, you know what, how best to lead in this group is let them be. So the most important thing about being a leader is to realize what exactly am I leading? Because you remember what you're leading is a group of people. That's the most important thing you need to realize. You're trying to get this group of people to accomplish an outcome. And so you're trying to figure out what is my job, and it's not always the same. And it's not always the same for every member of the team. Your job as a leader is to bring out the best in people, such that you achieve an outcome. And it is a daily decision, and you get it wrong all the time. That's the other thing about it. You get it wrong all the time. And I attribute it to being a parent, even though I'm not a parent, where you realize you never get it right, do you? You're never perfect, you never get it right, you make mistakes. But I feel if you're with a group of people and you realize you're trying to charge and get that hill, what do you need from me right now? How can I help you? Those are the best kinds of leaders that people want to join. And that's the other thing interesting about leader. You want to know if you're a good leader? If you move a role or change a job and people come to you and go, I want to come with you. That's the biggest, most powerful indicator if you're a good leader. Will people come with you? If no one's coming with you, it's a pretty good sign something's got to change in your leadership style. That's my point of view.
That's great. I'm going to turn it over to a question that is only asked on a panel with all women. And Eva was saying earlier this should be asked to men as well on panels, but it's about work-life balance. And it is really hard to be a leader and a mom. And I'm going to speak for myself and say it is really challenging when you have two people who are professionals in a home and you have children. It's not easy. So let me ask you, it's an illusion. There's really no such thing, I know. But I guess, do you have any tips when it comes to trying to achieve this elusive idea of work-life balance? Michelle, I'll start with you.
I have been asked this question.
Oh,
many
I'm sure you have.
But I don't mind answering it because I actually did throughout my career. I've always been ambitious. I always aspired to leadership. So I asked this question of a lot of leaders too. And one of the leaders I asked said, I'm a business person. I outsource things. And I actually thought that was great advice. And so when I had my first child, I didn't make a lot of money, and I couldn't afford a nanny, but I was able to get at a relatively young age my son into daycare. And when I did start to grow a little bit more my income, I got a cleaning lady to help out a little bit because I didn't want to spend my time that way. I wanted to spend my time working. And then I was also able to, and I'm really fortunate to have a wonderful nanny. Picking the right partner who is going to balance you is very important. And the other thing is that I do have a very supportive husband at home. So I do have 3 kids under 7. So it is a very busy household. And there are things I've had to let go of. My house is a disaster, and I don't mind saying that because that's not what's important to me right now. So give yourself a bit of grace, but also decide, what do you want to do with this one precious life and the limited time that you have? And for me, I did make some decisions that I wasn't creating an Instagram-worthy house. It was getting my work house in order.
I'm with you. My house is a disaster too, for the record. Eva.
I love what you said about you're a business person. I think for me as a business person, and I run all the annual planning and goal setting at Borwell, but I apply a lot of those frameworks to my life as well, which is like what is important to me? Like what, I think similarly, it's like what is important and what's not important. And if it really is important as a goal, I have business goals, but I have like outside life goals. And I think you need to allocate the time and attention to those, to achieving those goals the same way that you would with the work goal. And so again, it is like letting go of things. I remember I also have kids. I have two. They're older now. They're like 10 and almost 13. But when they were younger, I did stupid things like I baked all their bread because you're not supposed to like eat salt. Do you remember that? So I made salt-free bread. I like made all of our laundry detergent. Do you know what I mean? I was sort of like a type A person at home, and I realized it's like I just had to let go of some of those things.
I want to know how to make laundry detergent.
I know. I don't even know.
You should look it up. It's very easy. And honestly, it's although I have like
Takes time.
Yeah. I have a better product. This is like a total aside, but I will promote another Canadian company through this. I didn't like the idea of all this water being transported. It just felt like environmentally like you're buying literally 90% water when you buy liquid laundry detergent. But there are these like laundry strips that you can now buy. Do you guys know what's the name of this company? There's some, True something. Anyways, I'm doing a bad job
Not
promoting.
the pods. You're not talking about the
Not
pods.
pods. It's like literally like a strip of that you just like tear off and you put in, and it
Like a
dissolves.
bounce sheet?
A little
This
bit
is
like
so
that,
off
yeah.
topic. Okay, anyway.
It's off topic, but
Sorry,
it's a Canadian
I'm just
company. Anyways,
trying to understand it.
I'll find it and share. Wait, where did? Oh yeah, True Earth. True Earth. Yes, that's what it is. What were we talking about?
Work-life balance.
So I actually will say
You get distracted.
you get distracted.
Oh,
I will
man.
say I feel like I've got decent work-life balance. Part of that is my husband is currently not working and he's at home, and so that's been a lovely treat. But I think you just have to decide. You could work 40 hours, you could work 80 hours, like I could work 100 hours. I have to decide when I stop work and when there are diminishing returns to when I work and when I'm going to do other things. And so I think figure out the life that you want to live, figure out where you want to allocate time, and as much as possible, like live to that goal. If it's not working, try to make changes. And it's not going to be perfect, but I think like you're in control of your own time and you can decide how you want to spend it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way. I personally have thrown out my plan, like my 10-year plan. I had these ones since I was little, and now I've made a priority list. So it's like now it's like this is the most important, this is the second most important, this is the third most important, and anything that doesn't align with that is out. So I love that you both are aligned on that. What about you? Teenage kids, right?
Yeah, one daughter, teenage, 17, nearly 18. She thinks she's 27, but anyway, it's another story. So I admire you for making laundry detergent. I have never and will never make laundry detergent.
That's like the one takeaway. We're all going to walk away.
Exactly. True Earth. I'll remember that. But I think that stop trying for perfection. So we often have, for women and for men, this Wonder Woman or Wonder Man, Superman thing that you think, I remember speaking to girlfriends and she'd say, oh, I'm so upset. I'm not there. My husband didn't give my daughter vegetables tonight for dinner. And I said, who cares? If the kid eats vegetables, number one, the kid will be happy not having vegetables. And I said, if they don't eat vegetables a couple of nights, stop. Who cares? Stop striving for perfection. Perfection does not exist in human beings, in situations. It does not. So I put that off the list right away. I was humble enough, you have to ask for help. When people offer, sometimes mothers-in-law or mothers say, you want me to come over? Yes. Yes. Do you want me to bake something for you? Yes, please. So accept it. Number one, they'll be happy. They're all happy that they're helping you. They do it from a good place. So don't strive for perfection. Accept the help. Get organized, determine what's important. For me, what was important, I would strive to come home to dinner every night when my daughter was young. For me, that was really important. I didn't mind for so many years missing some dinners, I didn't mind doing that. I wanted to be home. Now she wants me to be out. So it's okay, the balance comes back. But I would decide for me what was important, and that was spending time, quality time. I did have a cleaning woman, thank God. I still do. And I will forever, I think. I don't want to spend my time doing that. So just take it easy, remove the guilt. Women and men have so much guilt, useless guilt. And sometimes I speak to my daughter, I said, do you remember, when mommy was there? She goes, I don't remember that at all. So kids don't, it's not that important.
And one day they'll be proud of you, right?
Exactly.
One day? Okay.
They are not.
Okay, good. I have something to look forward to. Go ahead, Judy. What do you think? Work-life balance.
Well, I have no children.
But you travel a lot.
Yeah, so for those of us in the room who can't have children or have decided and will decide not to have children, our challenge is a little different, right? I'll speak about myself, I work too much because there's nothing to distract me. I have no, reason to get home, or I have tos. My have tos are different. And so, they represent a different type of challenge in terms of balance. The interesting thing about the word balance is you create the formula and recognize the formula is going to change over time. But I may ask everyone in the room, how many people here work for a boss who is on text 24/7 and don't think they actually can go to sleep and turn their ringers off? I had many of those, many of those. And so that's I think the challenge in the conversation in the room is when you are in a work environment or you work for an individual where you don't feel like you can have that decision and choice, right? And that's, I think, the challenge is how do you establish those boundaries? How do you have those conversations? Maybe it's self-inflicted, right? Self-imposed. Oh, I think I'm supposed to be on 20. Did you ever have a conversation with the boss and say, do you have to be on 20? Right. So I encourage open communication, especially this day and age. I would tell you, having that open dialogue, can you help me understand what your expectations are of me? So that I feel relief, I feel I can have permission to turn it off at 7 or to turn it off at 4. I need to leave on Friday so I can get to my softball game. So I would encourage open conversation about that.
Do you feel, we only have a few minutes left, and I want to get to one more question before we go to Q&A, but do you feel like the fact that you don't have kids, do you think more is put on you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You think that's been that way your whole career?
Yeah, because, those of us who watch Sex and the City, I'm the you don't have kids, so we'll give it to you. Can you stay late? Can you just, the rest of us have to run for our train, So there's this implied assumption that when you're the single person in the room, and this happens today, there is that situation. And I think there's more of us, especially when you're younger, right? Like you don't have children, so there's many young people in this room. When you don't have children, what is the expectation of you?
Yeah, a lot of people I can see in the audience agreeing with you with what you're saying, and I think the key to that is that open communication, as you said, right?
Just ask, just say, hey, do you think I can leave on Fridays, or are you going to get upset? And you'd be amazed to say, no, that's completely in your head, Judy. You could have turned the phone off for the last 5 years. Wow. Yeah, you could have done that.
If you only knew. We're going to turn it to audience Q&A, but if there was one key piece, I just want to end with this. So if there was one key piece of advice, and let's try to keep it short because I know a lot of people have questions. One key piece of advice you can leave people with today, what would it be that you want to say, Michonne?
I think the thing that's been hardest for me throughout my career is just having that grander sense of perspective. Mm-hmm. So wherever you are right now, it's just a chapter. So, some folks, when you come back from maternity leave, that can be a really difficult transition when you first start out working, when you first get your first big job, maybe when you have a boss that you're not gelling with, whatever that is, it's a chapter. So, keep in mind what you're trying to achieve and the values that you want to realize through your work, and it'll change.
Great. Eva?
I love what Jen said about just don't feel guilty. Make choices and then feel good about those choices, right? And so, be authentic, be yourself, and don't feel guilty.
Great. I like that one.
I would say, it's a hard question. Just one. Okay, so just one. Okay, just one. Trust your instincts. You know when it's the right place. You know if you're working for the right people. trust your instincts. Your instincts are rarely wrong.
I love that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to go with that one. Like,
Ditto.
Honestly, yeah.
That's great. And I think from you, I'm going to take, I think it's really interesting how you were talking, like, a round square, a round peg in a square hole. Like, there are other places for you if the culture doesn't fit.
Before that very insightful comment, I was gonna say, don't suffer.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when I look back on my life, I've suffered so much. I stayed in jobs too long, worked for people. I had nothing to prove, but yet I wanted to prove myself to them. Do not suffer. It would be my parting comment. You don't need to.
Can I give a comment to the men?
Yeah, of course,
Great to
please.
see so
Nice
many
to
men.
see men.
Great to
here.
see so many men in the
Yeah.
audience, by the way. Thanks, guys, for because you need men to help support. So men, I'll just give a general comment. Don't assume that the women will not be interested in participating in an activity or that they don't want to be asked. Ask them. Ask them. Inclusivity means you ask the person to be there, and they'll tell you if they want to come or not. But just ask the question. We're counting on you guys to ask the women to be there. That's so important. Okay?
And if
we'll
you're-
ask you in return too.
This recently happened to me. There was an overseas trip, and I was told they were like, well, you can't leave at a moment's notice with your family. I'm like, just ask me. Maybe I can. Like, and so I've now said, ask me. Like, I've now turned it, like you can ask me. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to do this now. But can we do Q&A quickly? Do we have any questions? Yes.
There is clearly a gap between men and women, whether it become economic, leadership. Question one. Over the last,
microphone.
Yeah. Do you mind going to the mic over there? Thanks.
question one. Over the last 20 years, do you feel that gap is shortening? And then number two, if that is a project, what are the things that this room or rooms like this and panels like yourselves need to do to shorten that gap?
Anyone want to take that one?
I think the pandemic has been horrible, actually, for everything to do with, I'll say diversity in general, including women. So I think the pandemic has been horrible because you're stuck at home and you think about people even less. I'll just say generally, pet peeve, the pandemic has been horrible for humanity in general to learn how to speak, courtesy for other people, consideration of others. People are sort of being alone in their houses for so long that they've forgotten what it is to be in a community and be social. So I would think that more effort needs to be done to really try to change things. The inclusivity, asking the questions, having people participating, forcing that communication and to change things. Men and women need to work together more than ever. And it's not just a question of just a woman thing or just a man thing. It's a question of a group thing. How do we as a group collectively? Okay, sorry, it's my French side. Collectivement. I'll say it in French.
Sounds nicer that way.
How do we do that collectivement?
I wish I could talk French.
I'll teach you.
I think the one thing I would say to you is I do think it's changed. Like, look at, when I was young, you could not find this many women to get on a panel. I can tell you how many times, and I take a moment. When I get into a meeting, a Zoom call now, I can't explain to you how many times I'm like, oh my God, it's all women in this call, what's happening? Or I can see diversity in the call, oh my goodness, what's happening? It's so stark that I have to take a moment and make a point of it. So you have to recognize that things have changed and we just got to keep going. And so if you think about a project, I would encourage each one of you, no matter what position you have, do something. Just one thing, like one small thing. I'll give you a perfect example. When I became a vice president, which was a big deal, I'm like, how am I going to make a difference in the management team? How am I going to change this management culture? And I literally went to all the third-party consulting companies, the IBMs and the blah, blah, blahs and the blah, blah, blahs and Microsoft. And I said, each of you have a sales rep that calls on me. And I said, I only want female and I want diversity reps calling on me. And until you get one of those, I'm not taking a meeting from you. And I said it very politely. Like, I wasn't trying to be difficult, but I was like, I'm doing this because I think it's important for us to invoke change. That created 15 jobs in sales, in tech, for a group of individuals who were not and did not look like that representation at that time. So it's very, very small things you can do.
Any other questions that we have from the audience?
I think we have time for maybe one more. This one right there.
The conversations have been great, but there's one question, and I don't know if we ever got anywhere close to it. It's more around sponsorship within the organization and as you've grown. So growing through some of the, you go from an analyst to a senior analyst, those can be a lot of skill-based. But as you grew in your organizations, I'm sure you came across the boys club or the men's club. How did you break that ceiling, and how did you get to that, that next level to, in most companies where women only go about this far and then suddenly it's all men. Like when you start looking at all the books, it's all men that are showing up. So what was your experience like? Any one of you would like to share?
The breakthrough. Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for that.
I started my own company and gave myself the title Chief Operating Officer.
Amazing.
Great, that's great. I grew up in a family with 3 brothers. So they tried to boss me around the whole time I was young. So I learned quickly that I didn't have to be, I couldn't be stronger than them. I couldn't be stronger, I couldn't be faster, but I could be smarter. So I always tried, number one, to participate in conversations and do great work. You try to do a quality level of work, and it's that builds credibility. And when you build credibility, then people will talk to you and they'll listen when you speak. So you can't be intimidated by the fact that even now you go in rooms sometimes and I'm the only woman in a room full of men. I mean, I was in charge at one point of a telecom group, and I went and they said, little lady, come here, I'll show you what a server is. And I said, I'm so happy you told me that because I've never seen one in my whole life. And then when they finished laughing, I said, okay, now can we get down to business? So I've used humor a lot as well to sort of offset situations. I've had to because there were no women in IT.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're also asking, and if I can paraphrase, I think when Chad from UCC hires somebody that's under him, he's going to hire another Chad that he wants to hang out with from UCC that graduated 20 years later. It seems like people who are at the top are hiring people very similar to them at the bottom, and it just is this cycle, and then it's hard to really crack that, right? Like how do you crack that? How did you guys do it?
Listen, we do this. We're just human. We hire and we like people who are like us to be around us, right? So it's not like a gender thing. It's just but that's why you have to be very conscious of it as a leader.
Right.
Right. The best training I ever took, I went to Queen's University as a leadership program. This is like decades ago. And they taught me about the Herman Miller brain. Has anyone heard that? Herman Miller brain. Your job as a leader is to form a brain. You have the analytical brain, you have strategic, you have people who follow the rules, and then you have risk takers. Personality. Your job is not to create everyone in a team that looks like you and feels like you. And so you have to just be very cognizant of paying attention that you're trying to hire representation and diversity such that you get better, individual pieces of thought. But you have to break the cycle, and the only way to break the cycle is you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention.
Michelle, last word to you.
Yeah. I have been in multiple different positions with respect to sponsors, and I think your question is, how do you get someone who's going to take a chance on you? And that's a really important, because we can't change the numbers, and that someone is going to sponsor you and speak well of you in that room and give you that next chance to move into leadership, or that next experience you need to grow and develop. And 2 learnings from my experience with sponsorship. One is, if you're working for someone who isn't also going to be your sponsor, there's a certain amount of time that you can stay there, and you don't want to be moving around. And I've always tried to learn from whenever I was in experience that I didn't feel like was fully supportive. But if you don't feel like your manager is your sponsor, you should be considering where you can go. But in the meantime, there's plenty of other people that aren't your manager that you can develop a relationship with and who can sponsor you. And there are a lot of really amazing men out there who want to make a difference. Focus your energy on supporting them, because they're the ones that should be in leadership.
That's a really good point. I love that. Yeah, that's the person who's responsible for my career as a man, and is not a woman. There was no women role models when I started, like I'm sure those of you. So, yeah, I'm glad we ended on that note. Thank you so much. Thank you all. A round of applause for our stacked panel over here. What a great conversation. Yeah. We're gonna get to the. Maybe we should get Ian. Do you mind? We're going to get to the fun part of this. So this is the Geneva Center for Autism, and they do such fantastic work. Can I ask you to grab the?
Why don't we ask one of the?
Sure. Okay, ladies. Who wants to do it? All right. And Leafs jersey signed Jeffrey Loppel. Yeah.
Read it out. Yeah.
Read the whole number.